going? Good morning, everyone. This is Toksa Hour. I'm Maggie Ross. I'm with Julie Twigo and with Moses Brings Plenty. And guess what? We're all from Porcupine, South Dakota. Isn't that pretty darn awesome?
Love it. I love it.
Good morning, Moses and Julie. How are you both doing?
Good morning. I'm doing good. Julie must be quiet.
Good morning. I'm really good. Moses, we've been really excited for this, and I'm super appreciative and super glad that you could come on and join us to visit with us this morning. I was writing a list of all of your going-ons and stuff like that, and performances in Brulé, roles in Yellowstone, Cowboys versus Aliens, Hell on Wheels, The Good Lord Bird, Wildfire, The American West, The Glorias, American Experience, Res Bomb, The Wild West, and stunts in The Revenant and Holy Man. So hopefully I got them all. There was a lot of writing to do, but that's pretty impressive and pretty awesome.
House of Cards. Well, thank you so much. I mean, you know, it's been a wild journey. It's been a very trying journey as well. I just want to first of all say thank you to both Maggie and Julie for what you're doing. You know, it's so important to continue to share and communicate, to keep the communication going. And you're a very good avenue to the outside, you know, especially for those of us that no longer reside on the reservation, you know, to be able to keep a connection of what's occurring and what's going on. I talk to my mom and dad. Enoch and Dalla Brings Plenty, you know, a lot, and my brother Joseph Brings Plenty. I speak with them and what's going on and what's occurring, you know, in the area, what's happening, what's the news, and so on and so forth. And I try to keep updated on that. But it's just, like I said, it's been quite a wild journey. You know, and I talk a lot with a good friend of mine. I consider him my brother, Pat Beam. Talk to him quite a bit too, you know, and so just I try to keep connected the best that I can with a lot of relatives back home, and so it's just, you know, sorry, I'm just really nervous right now. I don't know why. And I try not to be, you know, I mean, not, I just, you know, I get antsy, you know, because there's so much to share, and I know there's a time frame to what we have going on, but it's not so much about me and what I do or what I've accomplished. For me, I haven't really accomplished much yet because of the fact that, you know, I still feel that there needs to be a lot of headway, you know, done yet within this industry that I'm now starting to be a part of, you know, and try to open doors for a lot of our people to also have the same opportunities, not just in front of the camera, but behind the scenes as well. You know, there's so many opportunities behind the scenes. And so it's you know, it's good when once in a blue moon, I'll come across another Indian person and that's working on set, you know, whether they're working as a grip or they're part of lighting, you know, our set decoration, so on and so forth, or sound. You know, it's so exciting for me when I see our young Indian people getting involved in that aspect, because the more Indian people that are involved, at some point, I truly firmly believe that we can begin telling our own stories and begin our own production companies, you know, and so on and so forth, because it's a good way to change the alterations that had been implemented upon our cultural identities and our way of living, so on and so forth. You know, I mean, it's still, and it's really good too, because like I said, you know, I'm very honored to be a part of the series Yellowstone, and I owe a lot of that to few individuals. You know, I owe that to Taylor Sheridan, who's now making room at the table that we have not been invited to, you know, or don't even have a place at the table to be seated at. But Taylor Sheridan's making room for us to be a part of that. You know, Taylor, I don't want to speak too much on his personal experiences, but he's got involved with our people through the Yellow Boy family. And I know he speaks highly. I mean, he speaks highly of Corey and so on and so forth. And so, and it is because of that connection at his younger age that now he's like, man, I want to give back. And so he's given that, you know, making space for that, you know, and expressing his gratitude for what our culture and our people have done for him. You know, it's mainly the Yellow Boy family, and also Gil Birmingham, who's a Comanche, and man, I tell you what, him and I really truly view him as a brother. You know, our brotherhood has really connected, you know, and it's grown since season 1. And so I've known Gil before. I've you know, him and I worked in the same season of House of Cards. We didn't have scenes together. We didn't work together, but we were in the same, you know, in the same season of House of Cards. And I remember I was always standoffish. I'm always standoffish when it comes to meeting other people. And Gil and I both got on the same elevator. He's like, man, how's it going? Glad you're here. La-di-da, la-di-da. And I said the same things. And he goes, well, you want to go grab a bite to eat? And I was like, no, I'm good, you know, because of just being standoffish. I think just being shy, so to say. But I learned that I had to overcome that shyness to be able to, you know, get to know people. And Gil, like I said, I have a lot of respect for Gil Birmingham because that guy is very talented. You know, he's mastering the art, and I'm learning a lot from him as well. And I think vice versa, he's learning things from me as well. I mean, we communicate, you know, quite a bit, even off season. You know, we stay in contact. We talk. You know, we chat on the phone. We take the time to try to see each other. And spend some time together off season as well. And with this whole pandemic, this year it was different because we didn't have the freedoms to go and do a bunch of stuff. We were on a tight leash, so to say, because we were within the Yellowstone bubble. We were tested 3 times a day or a week, 3 times a week, every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And there was no skipping a test, no ands, if, or buts, you know. And so we had to stay within that range of reporting to getting tested. And so it gave us an opportunity because we could spend time together as with, you know, with the crew members, people that we've never got to meet before. And so but Gil and I and my family and him, and we all did a lot of hiking. We spent a lot of time with wranglers and other individuals that were part of the show that we didn't get that time before. And so it was a blessing to spend that time. And so Gil and I's brotherhood grew even more. You know, I have a lot of love. Like I said, I truly have a lot of love and respect for that individual. He's a great human being and a very talented one at that.
You know, Moses, I've known you for a long time. And it's very rare as we got older that I got to see you. I think whenever you became famous for Brulé, I saw you one time at Big Bats, and we kind of visited a little bit. And then the next time I saw you was around I remember what was going on, but it was a big controversial thing. He was up here um, checking things out, and so again, saw you at Big Bats, and we sat and visited and visited and visited. Um, so even now, like when I look at you, I see Moses from the years when we were young.
Oh, that's awesome.
I remember those times, we were runners and all of those things, that we try to do as young guys. And it makes me just think about like our upbringing. And and I always think of Dave, your Uncle
Yeah.
Dave brings plenty. And like how he was really influential in a lot of people's running and doing all of that. And so I can't help but think about that, and like I wonder, like, how did Moses become Moses? I mean, I'm really fascinated by your story. Could you like maybe share some of like how all of this happened, and maybe it gives hope for someone coming behind you, that they could maybe get there too.
You know, growing up on the res there, I remember we had no running water and electricity. Um, and to be honest and truthful, I reflect that that's one of my go-to places to feel safe. Um, and it's one of the go-to places for me when to feel joy and happiness, because those were the best days of my life. You know, yeah, it was a struggle. You could say in today's time we would consider that a struggle, but really it wasn't. And the reason being that it wasn't a struggle was, yeah, I didn't have, my folks didn't have a lot, but what they had was priceless, and that was laughter. And there was, my dad always told me, my dad said, always said to me, he said, son, there was no such thing as a free meal. And I remember one summer, it was in the middle of July and it was hot. And my dad said, all right, boys, let's go. He got us up. My brother Joe and I, he got us up, and we grabbed the handsaws. We grabbed the handsaws and the axe. And I was like, what are we doing? And I didn't question him. I said, but in my mind, I said, what are we doing? And so we went out and we start collecting wood. And so I asked my dad, I said, Dad, why it's summertime? Why are we cutting wood right now? And he said, well, there's one thing that is guaranteed. I said, what's that? He said, winter's gonna come, whether we are ready or not. Winter's gonna come. And so wouldn't you rather be gathering wood right now just in a t-shirt versus trying to gather wood in the wintertime when you can't see it? Maybe it's covered with snow. And so I was like, all right, makes sense. And so we gathered wood the remainder of the summer. But we still try to find time to go play. We'd go to Evergreen, go hang out with you guys or whatever, we'd always try to still find time to play or make time to play. And as kids, our imaginations ran. Our imaginations was creative, but the creativity that we obtained at that time was the creativity that was already laid forth before us and by our ancestors. So I remember there were times we'd go over to Killsback's place, and my cousin Boyd had some horses. We'd get on the horses. We would pretend to be warriors. We'd pull out the weeds that still had the root system at the bottom, so it'd be like a lance or a spear, and we would be riding horses and chasing shadows, pretending they were buffalo. We were going to hunt and provide for the people. Those were the games that we played, and I had other influences also, and growing up, my uncle David was a great influence. Being a runner, I remember Billy Mills, and I began to kind of toy with the idea of one day being an Olympic runner. But in that time, there was a lot of trials and tribulations. I remember one time as a student, I went to different schools there on a res. I'm not going to say which school this was at, where this occurred at, but I remember in school one time I was asked by a counselor, write down the 3 things that you want to become. From the very top, the number 1, and then your second, and then your third. And I said, okay. And so I wrote down a math teacher, because when I was younger, I loved math. Now I'm not a fan of math, but I loved math when I was younger. Second was a fighter pilot in the Marine Corps. I just wanted to be a fighter pilot. I wanted to fly jets, you know, maybe because my cousins, Darren Brinks-Plenty and all them, they like playing Army. And so I don't know if that was the influence on that or what. And the third, of course, was a firefighter. I wanted to be a firefighter. But this counselor, she looked at me and she smiled and kind of chuckled a little bit. And I'll never forget this. And she said, you know, that I don't think you can become those. You're either going to become another statistic of alcoholism, or another statistic of life of incarceration and or death at an early age. And I said, what? And she told me, she said, Crazy Horse is dead. And so that made me angry inside, but I couldn't express my emotions because of what we were taught, how we were taught to respect our, you know, the powers that be, so to say. And I didn't have dreams. I didn't have ambitions to become a musician. I didn't have ambitions to become an actor. I did have ambitions to becoming a bull rider, because I got to meet one of our greats. I got to live with him, and that was Howard Hunter Sr. One of the most greatest horsemen that's ever existed in my lifetime so far to date. I've met some really good ones, but none like him. So that was an inspiration that I thought, well, okay, maybe I can do that. And of course, I wasn't any good at that at all. You know, Smiley Sarah and all them guys, man, they were awesome. There's, you know, amazing bull riders. And I look at a lot of our amazing bareback riders, you know, West Janice and you know, all them guys, Jared Sherwood from the Rosebud Reservation, all them guys, you know, and all them good Indian rodeo cowboys, I couldn't even hold a candle near. So I was like, man, all right, I spent more time in injuries than I did accomplishments. So I was like, maybe I need to rethink this. So a lot of respect for them guys. I remember when we were students, I was going to school at Kyle and at the time, and Howard Hunter Jr. and I would go over to Wesley Janice's place. He had a bucket machine there, and we used to have our own little bareback competitions and stuff like that, you know, and would judge each other, give each other scores, so on and so forth. But we spent a lot of time there doing that. But again, it wasn't my forte. And you know, and Andy Robinson was an amazing bareback rider too when I was a kid growing up, when I was younger. But you know, there was a lot of different influences. But the ones that influenced me the most, that I kept trying to deny, was our ancestors. I kept trying to turn my back on them, you know, because I was too angry. And at some point I wanted to figure out how to become a warrior. How can I become a warrior for our people, you know? And I remember meeting one of my cousins, Warfield Moose Jr., and we slept together and we prayed together. I remember him, you know, when we was kids, and then all of a sudden what he's become, and I was like, wow, good for him. Good for him. He's figured it out somehow, some way. He's there, and I remember his dad sharing a lot of stuff, you know, but I always tried to deny that side because of the shame that I was taught, the shame that came with that, you know. And then I was privileged to spend time with Leonard Crodog Sr. and a lot of our people, you know, the Doll Knives, you know, there's a lot of them. And to see you, Maggie, to see you and my auntie Rhonda Two Eagles, and just in the efforts that everyone was trying to, the differences they were trying to make within our communities, and that became a bigger influence for me. And just by chance, you know, I got to become a musician through Paul LaRoche. You know, I met him a few times, and our friendship grew. And I'm thankful for the opportunities that they've given me to be a part of their journey. You know, and I left because then I was like, well, I got to do something different. I'm always on the move. I'm always on the move, and so acting just kind of came about, and I thought, well, you know, I can try stunts. I can do stunts. I wanted to be a stunt man, and I found the difficulties of that was due to the fact that not because I didn't know how to ride a horse, it was because of the fact that it's like a basketball team. They had their starting five, and if you replace one of them with someone totally different, then the team has to regrow and reconnect. And so I kind of got that. I was like, all right, I get it. But I kept dreaming, not of fame, not of fortune. I kept dreaming, and I continue to dream of our ancestors. I keep dreaming of our past. I keep longing for that strength, that compassion, a place of no jealousy, you know, where our people were true and they honestly looked out for one another. That's my dream. And everything else that came about, it was not a goal set for me. It was just an opportunity. And I kept working hard at what I'm working hard at. I really don't know when it comes to a career. I'm working hard at the desire. I'm working hard to meet my ancestors one day. And I want to meet them ancestors in this life, not in the next. I want to meet them in this life. And so that's kind of, I guess, the bottom line. And I'm not saying that my Indian cowboy, rodeo cowboy relatives are any less Indian than I am. No, they were just gifted at that and they could do it. Or anyone else for that matter, Paul, anyone, they're not any less Indian than I am. I just was given an opportunity to do something, and so I did it to the best of my abilities. And now it's like, it's not, whenever I'm on a set somewhere, you know, it's not about Mo brings plenty. It's about literally, when I say, hey, and Indians can do that too. Indians can do that. Let me show you. Let me show you that Indians can do that. And so I learned. I remember grandmother telling me. She said, you know, grandson, when you wake up in the mornings and you walk out of your home, she goes, you just don't represent yourself or your family, nor do you just represent the Lakota nation. She goes, you represent all of us as Indian people. So what kind of representative are you going to be? And in all these little sayings that people gave me along the way, you know, I took it to heart. I stored it, and now I'm utilizing it. I stopped storing it and I'm starting to try to utilize it, you know. And so my life is the people's life. And the safest manner and safest way that I can do it and live it. And that's kind of it. I made a lot of mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes. I made a lot of mistakes in that time. Like I said, it was filled with trials and tribulations. I've hurt people along with hurting myself, and decisions and choices that I made. I can't go back and fix that, change it. It's happened. I can't change 5 seconds ago. And so I try to learn from the things that I've done wrong to never do them again. I try to figure it out. I don't know. I'm still a student. I'm still a student in this gift we call life.
I usually have a notebook and I write down all kinds of stuff people talk about in our interviews. And I don't know, I didn't bring my notebook. So I like to do quotes, like things that people say on Toksa Hour that are kind of impactful. And so I just quoted you on my Facebook. My life is the people's life. Moses brings plenty. Have to do the how do they do that? Remember in the those old pictures, Centra, whatever century.
Oh yeah, yeah, that's right.
Or circuit, oh, something like that. They say.
Right. I for me, honestly, I'm just the same old Mo. I'm not famous by no means. I mean, I dream. I think about our existence every day. I pray for us every day. And here's one thing that, as I reflect and I look back, I try to maintain a sense of control, or the ability to acknowledge or see, to be able to identify this thing we call jealousy if it tries to come my way. I remember when I first started out, I used to be mad if a role came down to like Michael Gray Eyes and I, or Adam Beach and I. And instead of looking at the fact that I was even recognized or seen by someone in that same category, I should have been happy. Instead, if I didn't get the role and they got the role, I became Nawizi. and I would be like, man, that guy's not even an Indian from here. I mean, I'd go on and I'd be mad like that. And then I'm like, whoa. I remember, and I had to truly remember. And there's a pandemic that our people are facing. And this pandemic's been here for a long time. And this pandemic has nothing to do with another race or another system or another religion or way of prayer. It's a pandemic that has been here long before 1492, but it was dealt with throughout the centuries. And this pandemic is called jealousy. When it was recognized by the people in an encampment, a group of warriors, the people made there was a have to decision to remove this individual, regardless of who this individual, which family this individual was a part of. They removed this individual. These group of warriors would take that individual clear away from the camp. And they would leave that individual to allow the wolves and others to determine whether this individual can self-heal, can heal or mend itself within, because jealousy and a negative competitiveness back then was truly considered a mental illness. It was a sickness. And so if that individual could self-heal and begin to recognize and understand that, oh man, it isn't about me and we all need each other, they would begin to relearn and recognize from the wolf pack or from the buffalo herd or from the horse herd, so on and so forth, that we are all needed. We all need one another. Not one is greater than the next. And the reason why they did that was to help keep the strength and community together. Because if they didn't, well, look at society today. It's now, if we can go to any city, it's not just a reservation thing. It's not just an Indian pandemic. It's a people pandemic. And so we look at it, and if we can't overcome and pray against this jealousy and this negative competitiveness, we're always going to be stuck in poverty. Even someone asked me, they said, man, Mo, if the government gave your tribe $10 billion, do you think that would help heal a lot of things? And I said, I thought for a second, and I said to him, I said, man, if I'm to be honest, to be real, because I don't see myself as a traditionalist. A traditionalist is something that our ancestors were. It was a way of life. It was a way of living. But I see myself as a realist. And so I said, to be real in that regard, because I do recognize and understand what you're saying, I said, man, all that would do is create 10 billion more problems. Because we have to go back to the source. What is the source of our demise? What is the source of our weakness? At every ceremony, every Sundance, man, if all of us start praying against jealousy and start to try to make a difference against jealousy, just imagine how strong and how united we can be, and how powerful spiritually, mentally, and emotionally we could become again as a great Lakota people. We're still beautiful. By all means, we are still a beautiful people. No one can ever take that away from us except for ourselves. We're the only ones who could deny our own beauty. We're the only ones. We're the only ones who could pick ourselves back up and say, enough is enough. It's time to be exactly what our ancestors dreamt us to be. And that is a Lakota people. Stop the segregation and separation that has been implemented upon us by other human beings, and take back our power and take back our spirit and welcome back our ancestors so that we could see them again in this physical life today. I'm tired. I see stories. I hear stories in the eyes. I just don't see, but I hear stories in the eyes of our own people. Last time I saw Chief Leonard Crow Dog, I didn't know how to feel. We sat at Paradise. Him and I, we sat there. And he said, son, the people had Crazy Horse, and we wasted him. They wasted him. So the people have me, and they're wasting me. And I thought, I'm here. I'm here. But I get and understand what he meant by that. Because, the most treacherous racism I've ever experienced, the most horrifying racism I've ever experienced in my life was from my own. That made a deep cut inside. I began to realize that whenever I see it all the time, whenever one of our people try to do something good, there's some support. But boy, there's a lot of people ripping and tearing down. And it's sad. And I realized, man, Custer no longer has blonde hair and blue eyes. Custer now looks like me. How do I fix that? How do I change that? I'm not condemning our people. Like I said, we're still a beautiful people. We still have an opportunity. And then I see you and Sister Julie, both of you sisters are doing something. And I'm like, it makes me feel alive again. Inside, it brings a hope. It brings so much hope because there's the power. You are the power. You are the power that our people need. You are the power that our young people need. And so I love us. I love our people. Even in our flaws, I still think we are an amazing nation of people. Even in our triumphs, not, our triumphs and our struggles, all together, we are still a great nation of people. And I love that about us. We're still Lakota. We're still Lakota.
I was really thinking about that, what you were saying. I have my granddaughters running around now. But
It's awesome. It's awesome.
yeah, they always wanna what do they call that? Crash the Zoom or whatever. They always want to get in on it. But I was thinking about that, and we have a lot of people commenting in the news or in the feed. I don't know what the comment section of this interview. And one person was, when you were talking about the jealousy and that, and they're wondering, like, how do we deal with it? And you were talking about the prayer. It made me think of my uncle Chris Eaglehawk. He'll and then it made me think of um, my grandpa Johnson Holy Rock.
Hmm.
They had said, or they've always said that like these things all exist. Like we don't have that way of dealing with these issues anymore because we have civil rights. And so, like, I was thinking about where you were talking about taking someone and removing them. We can't do that anymore. Like,
Yeah.
we can't solve our own problems here because of civil rights now. And people can say, I have civil rights. And so that seems to be kind of a little bit frustrating.
Well, it's the thing with it is that, yeah, I totally get that, but I'm not suggesting that we remove people because I probably would have been removed a long time ago if that's the case, by no means. But I think there is different elements and different ways to begin to turn the tables back around, because we are still fortunate enough as Lakota people, as Indian people. And just real quick, the reason why I embrace the word Indian is because the label Indian is due to the fact that, I see so many people embracing Native American. But if we look back at our treaties, and this is the reason why I always use the word Indian, no treaties were ever made with Native Americans. They were only made with Indian people. And so we have to really begin to implement the true understanding of why it's important to always use the term Indian versus Native American, especially to our young people, because generations from now, when we make the transition in life, maybe they're going to try to utilize a treaty from the Fort Laramie Treaty from 1851 or whichever one. And if they ever get fortunate enough to go back to the Supreme Court and implement the treaty law, then, and they only identify themselves as Native Americans, the Supreme Court will say, well, sorry, this was made with American Indian people, not Native Americans. So so we have to be very careful and understand the psychological, warfare that we face as Indian people. And so, but anyway, what I was getting at was that if we can begin to recognize, especially our spiritual leaders, begin to recognize that, okay, how do we end alcoholism? How do we end substance abuse? How do we help encourage our children and put an end to suicides? Is that we have to begin to exterminate and pray against jealousy, not by exterminating our existence, but exterminating an emotion or a feeling that someone may have been taught or someone may have, because racism isn't something that we're born with. We're taught racism, and so we have to begin, and we have to be that example as well as adults. We have to be that example. And so we have to begin to make these little changes that it doesn't require a federal grant. It doesn't require any type of funding to be able to just make those changes in our own lives and start becoming that living vision and that living example of what it is that we're trying to say. I mean, because a long time ago, they didn't tell the children, oh, that's right, oh, that's wrong. They weren't there correcting and uncorrecting. They were just there simply watching. And that way the child would live its life and determine they kind of saw which society that individual would go to, determined by their actions as a youth. And so now we have to, because again, everyone was that example. We didn't have to write our language. We didn't have to have a written instruction, because in our instructions and what we needed was living. We could see it. And over 85% of our learning ability is through visual. And so if we see it, that's why I say I'm a realist. I don't believe in anything until I can see it.
I was just thinking that an answer to like how do you combat jealousy? I just, like your whole story, Moses. We all grew up that way. We all growing up in the 70s, and even, people before us, no water, no electricity. We are probably fortunate that we had outhouses. Some people did not have outhouses came later. and, and
Yeah.
you know what it's like to go and get water and drink water from a bucket or from a ladle,
Yeah.
and to share, like sharing a bath in a big in basin, and thinking about like that jealousy, that the cure of that is to acknowledge ourselves for who we are, and our own struggles. It doesn't mean that things are in a um anybody's less than or anybody's more than. Like I was saying, we grew up in very similar situations,
Mhm.
and we grew up in poverty. We um we spent in what 3 hours a day together riding a bus to school.
To and from, yes.
It's like, yeah, it's like all of this stuff, and if you had that one teacher who taught physics that was always talking about the bus going down Porcupine Hill, and there's ice here, and what's the friction, and all of that, and so, like, I don't know, like I look at you, and like I told you, I see the Moses I grew up with, and I'm very proud of the things that you have accomplished in your life, even in your struggle. Like, I'm proud of your struggle too, because you were able to come through that. And then you're able to look at the greater picture and say that, I live for the people now. And then you walk that. And so I think in many ways, if we all could come to terms with our own accomplishments and not worry so much about what somebody else has become or how they got there. And like I look at myself in my own struggle, and I'm okay with where I'm at. And my struggle was pretty rugged, but I got here. And so I think that's one thing. um and then the other thing, like one of the things that comes with jealousy is often this concept of fear, anger, resentment, and lying, cheating. So all of those things come with that. And so if we just um can learn to accept ourselves and understand that our struggle is our struggle. And then one person taught me years ago, when I started my recovery, that like we make some kind of journey plans before we get here, like um, lessons that we're going to learn, and to see if we can overcome them in this life. And so I always think of that in my life that way now, like even in my hardships, or when someone's doing something to me that, is really upsetting me, I always try to look at it in a way of, okay, they're here for a reason. So what's the lesson that I need to learn to overcome? And then also acknowledging emotion, like sometimes, we um, someone told me one time that our mouth is the most dangerous weapon that we have.
I agree. I agree
And sometimes I
100%.
really mess up.
So do I. You know, that's like you said, in I've been on sobriety. I've been alcohol and drug free for a great number of years. But like for me, it's like, okay, there's more. There's more. There's more to heal. There's more. There's more within myself. Sister Julie and I was talking the other day, and you know, the concept of love came up, you know, and like you said, if we can acknowledge ourselves, learn to love ourselves, because I know nothing about love. And I mean, not nothing. I know of love, but I don't know how to. I don't know. I didn't know. I don't know how to love. I most definitely didn't know how to be loved. And so to let alone try to figure out how can I change, fix myself? How can I fix myself? Because, you know, I didn't want to be a victim no more. I was tired of feeling defeat and being victimized. Again, the greatest trickster of all to me was me. And so I have to, I'm not perfect by no means. Oh my gosh. Every day I struggle. Every day I have to work on something. And I'm always going into battle within myself, between my heart and my mind. There's always a battle going on. And honestly, there's times that, like I said, I have to call back home, whether I call my dad, my ate or ina, or call my masu. You know, I have to call someone, not to talk about my issues or my problems, just to hear that voice, just to hear that, you know, something familiar, of who I once was, where we came from. Not saying in today's time I'm talking about our ancestors, and to get a laugh, you know, I have to call my bro Pat Beam and poke fun at him. So, and I know he'd poke fun at me just so we could laugh. And it's laughter that is much needed. Not the ha ha ha, but the real, true, deep laugh that we get when we visit with our own, you know, with someone that we grew up with. And so I really, I think a lot about how to try to change. I can't change people's lives. I can only change my own, you know, and it's hard. It's been really hard and difficult to look at myself, to see myself at times. And I really didn't want to look in that mirror, you know, and see my own reflection. And so I really, but I have to take the time to do that every day. At the end of the day, I analyze my life at the end of my day. You know, I remember a very wise individual shared with me that there's either going to be love that's going to be your power, or it's going to be fear. And if your fear is your power, then there's always going to be hardship. But if love is your power, then peace can dwell. Peace can reside again. Peace will be welcome back, you know. And so I think about that, and so with that, I analyze my life, and I think, whoa, what can I do? Did I conduct my life in such a manner in this day that has now gone that makes my ancestors desire to want to be in my presence as much as I desire to be in their presence? And if I'm honest with myself, the answer is no, not yet, not yet. So I have to try to make a change in my own life. It doesn't happen overnight by no means. It doesn't, you know, it takes time. It takes time to overcome a lot of the traumas that we've experienced. And even traumas that occurred to our ancestors, we're still experiencing. And so I remember when I first, like, to become alcohol and drug free, I remember the first time when I've tried that many times. I tried that journey many times and failed many times, but nonetheless, I kept trying. Finally, I succeeded. And in succeeding, another grandmother said, you know, if you ever feel the need to go back, if you feel that you're going to fall back into alcoholism or, other abuses, remember, you might as well go to Wounded Knee, to that massive gravesite. And you might as well be disrespectful to that massive gravesite. Because as a kid driving, when we rode the bus through there, remember, we went by there. Almost every day of our lives, we went by there. Whether we was in the old bone shaker and or with our parents going to town. We always went by Wounded Knee massacre site. And I didn't see what that really was. I saw it as a sense of defeat, which brought anger, which brought fear, welcome fear into my life at a young age. But what I didn't see until I was able to clear my mind of alcohol and anger and fear, not all of it's gone, but to clear a lot of it, I was finally able to recognize that place as a place of sacrifice, a place of love, a place of dreams, and those dreams are us, the people today. And so it's easy to fall victim. It is easy. But it takes great strength to continue standing. I remember a group, there was a music group, there was a line that they said, I'd rather die standing than continue living on my knees. And so it's not, I'm still an activist in my own way. This is it. This is my signs. These are my signs that I express every day that I'm holding. I braid my hair every morning. I go into the world. And I'm an activist for our people. I'm an activist for our ancestors because I want the world to know that we're still here. It's not about me and how I look. It's not, for any other reason other than to honor our ancestors. This is how our great grandfathers braided their hair. This is what they did every day. And so I do that. I still get people to make fun of me. I still get guys that point at me and laugh at me. And, I still get little kids. Oh, mommy, that's not a girl, that's a boy. I mean, I still get that. But I'm an activist. I am protesting. I am protesting the demise of our ancestors. I am protesting the denial of the existence of our ancestors and of my people today. That's how I protest.
Moses, I'm looking at the comments here, and you're getting a lot of compliments for your words and what you're saying, and your realness with situations that you've gone through and in your life and what you face. And there's even people asking why you don't get into politics. And there's a couple questions in regards to how you got into acting, and any advice that you have for some of our people to follow and to learn.
Okay. First, we'll go to the politics. We'll go to the politics. Why haven't I got involved in the politics? Well, to be honest, I've really, honestly, truly considered it. I considered it. And the reason being I consider is like, wow, maybe if I get into politics that I can make some type of change for our people. And the politics I'm speaking about, at first I thought about tribal council, and I thought, no, it has to go bigger than that. They always used to say, if you're gonna dream big, go dream way out there. And if you only land on the moon, at least you still made it somewhere. And so I was like, man, why not the president of this country? Why not run for presidency? And then I thought about it, and I thought, I see what they do to a lot of individuals who do run for that position or any political position, and it's quite scary. because then again, I was no angel growing up. I had a lot of innocence, but there was also a lot of deceit in my life. And so I guess you could say is just like any other human being in society today, we have skeletons in our closet. And so it's like, man, I don't want, that's not me. That's not who I was. That's who I was, but that's not me today. Like I said, I'm trying to heal and try to grow and mature with each day, with each passing day. And so I have, congratulations to Mr. Kevin Killer for his being elected. A good friend of mine who's also a director on Yellowstone is friends with him, and I have a lot of love and respect for Stephen, and so congratulations to him. But I didn't get into politics because of that reason. Maybe at some point I'll overcome that bit of fear and I will make a run for it, because I do believe in equality. I believe in the rights and the power of people. I spoke a lot about what I don't understand is that how can 99% of the population be controlled by 1%? And I think I know why, and so I have different solutions. I mean, I even have ideas that I see on the reservation to help make us more self-efficient. I see a path nice and clearly that would empower us as a people and make us break our ties of dependency upon federal funding. And it's an easy avenue, it's a great avenue, but it's going to take us as a people being a community again for that to be successful. Everything for us to be successful, we first have to be able to remove the emotion of jealousy out of each of us as individuals and come back together as a people for the sake of our children. And I can't even say as for the sake of future generations, because now it's our children that are feeling the repercussions. It's no longer a future generation issue, it's the children of today. And so, but yeah, so who knows? I don't know. Maybe in the future there might be some political runs for me. We'll see. But it's what got me into acting and speaking to a lot of our young people, because when I was there, one of my sisters, Joyce Wheeler, helped me get involved in speaking to the youth, and so my tante, she was helping me to talk to our young people and helping them, try to encourage them. But I always asked them, I was asking them, why aren't you so proud of who you are? Because I see a lot of wear and t-shirts and other wear and representation of other cultures and other races. And I said, well, that's fine that you wear that, but why aren't you proud of who we are? And a lot of them, the number one answer was, well, we don't see ourselves on TV. And I'm like, what? Man, well, how do we get on TV? How do we get on TV without committing a crime and just making it on local news? or standing up for our rights as Indian people and making it on local news? How do we get on TV? And so I went ahead and I met a gentleman in Rapid City, South Dakota named Jim Haskell, a good man. He's non-native, but he's a good man. He's into the history a lot. And so he was like, man, you got something. You got a look, you got abilities. He said, you should really check into it. And he is encouraging. Even Leonard Crodog Sr., Chief Leonard Crodog Sr. was encouraging. And so I went ahead and I moved to Omaha, Nebraska on a whim and got involved in community theater. And I was like, man, this is dumb. I don't know if I can do this. But I kept thinking about our children. And so I'm like, all right, I got to keep going. And so one thing led to another, because when I worked on Thunderheart, I was like, oh, hell no, this is not what I want to do. It's lame and boring. It's hurry up and wait. And so I didn't want nothing to do with it. But to be on TV, I got what our young people were saying. They were telling me that, why do I want to be something that society does not accept yet? And so I thought, okay, I got to change that somehow, some way. I don't know how, but I got to change it. And so I pursued it. I took acting classes. I worked in theater, did some shows in Omaha, Nebraska, and did some docudramas for the History Channel. And one thing led to another. And voila, here we are today. Now I'm on the #1 drama show on cable network called Yellowstone. And I got brothers on that show. Taylor Sheridan, Michael Friedman, Stephen Kay, Gil Birmingham. I mean, got a lot of support. I got a lot of support. And so it's worked out. It's worked out that way. And for our young people, please get involved. Get involved. I'm sure I wish that there was more community theater, more theater offered in our schools. I don't know about the college. I know that some people were trying to get it going, and I hope that it's still going. I need to check in on that because I want to be able to support that as well. Along with the Mothers Against Meth, I want to support them as well the best that I can. But our young people, there's a lot of great opportunities, especially with individuals like Gil Birmingham and others opening the door. Zahn McLaren, all of them are opening the door to Tonka Means. They're paving a way, and so better start working at it now. But it's a work ethics. It takes a lot of hard work. It's not about just showing up and saying a few lines or whatever. There's more to it. There are times I remember waking up at 2 a.m. because I had to report and be on set at 4 a.m. And then there are times that we show up in the afternoon, 2, 3 o'clock in the afternoon, and work all night until 6 a.m, 7 a.m. So it takes work ethics and work. That's always been in our DNA. Work has always been another part of our lives. Everything works. Everything must move to live. Even a tree has to move to live. It must move to gain its strength, and Sarah Ann shared that with a long time ago. She was like, man, everything has to move to live. And so everything moves to live. And I give credit to people that I learned things from. This is not how I became Moses Brings Plenty is because of all these amazing teachers, in our communities. First in our communities there and people outside of that. I've learned a lot from Taylor Sheridan as well, and so it's just, you gotta just, if you're given an opportunity, go with it, and just don't half-heart it. You have to give it all. You have to give it your all. And so I wasn't no great athlete as a youngster. I wasn't even the greatest runner, but I worked at it. I worked hard at running. I remember running. We lived east of the trading post in Porcupine. So Boyd Killsback and I, my cousin, we'd run the back way up through Thunderhawks towards Porcupine Butte. And then we would run back around down past the trading post. I mean, because we had ambitions. He went to a different school. I went to another school. We ran against each other during cross country, but we were still cousins. We were still Lakota. We still supported each other. And that's what needs to happen. We take the competitiveness that turns us against each other, and we turn it around and take the competitiveness that helps us to love one another. And so we have to work at it. Everything that we do, it takes work. I took what my father shared with me. There's no such thing as a free meal, and not even for a squirrel. Where it stores its winter food, it doesn't feel on its own. And a squirrel has the ability to prey just like we do. An eagle, same thing for an eagle. It has to fly for at times over 100 miles round trip, 150 miles round trip, just to live. Horses have to travel miles just to live, so they could eat, just to live. And so they have to work at it. Everything, it takes work. in nature. It's just a natural law. That's a law that has been implemented from the very beginning by the hands of the great creator. Whether we call that great creator Wakhantika, God, Allah, it don't matter what name we use. It's still the same great artisan of this who designed everything upon the planet. And so we have to look at it and work hard at everything. You know, no one gave me nothing. No one gave me nothing other than the Wakantika and our ancestors. They gave me life. So I have to utilize that life to the best of my abilities that will be, so that at the end of this physical life, it is still recognizable, you know, by those who gave it to me. And so that's what's important. You know, we talk about horses. I want to talk about horses. Horses also played a role in saving my life. You know, it is because of my love for them. I love to ride I love riding horses. I love it. Oh my gosh, that was my freedom. That was my escape from the dramas in society. I mean, which back then as a kid, we didn't have much drama. There wasn't much drama at all. But what little drama that existed, you know, was taken away by the horses by riding them. And so horses are a big role. And now today, the horses need us. If we look, if I was visiting with the nephew the other night on the phone, and I asked him, because we were talking, we always talk about spiritual things. And so he was talking about, man, do you think there's still hope for us? I said, yeah, there's still hope for us. Because he's young, he's concerned about the existence of us as a Lakota, Nakota, Dakota, as Indian people. And so I said, yeah, there's still hope for us. And I said, but let me help you to understand and recognize something. He said, okay, what is it? What is it, Lakshi? And I said, all right. Give me 3 very sacred things to us as the people of today. 3, just 3. And he said the Chanupa. I said, okay. He said the eagle feather. I said, okay. And he said the children. I said, yeah, those are 3 sacred things. I said, but here's the thing that we're missing. The thing that we're missing is the ability to look beyond the Chanupa. To look beyond that. And what was those things? What was the things that shared with us, that gave us something to help our people in the existence and to make it through the ages and the cycles of the earth? That was the buffalo, the horses, the elk, the wolves. But we forgot their sacredness. With the buffalo, we still maintain it. We still maintain the sacredness of the buffalo. We still maintain the sacredness of the elk, but the horses, we forgot. The horses were the bridge between the physical and the spiritual. We forgot that bridge. We forgot that bridge. And so the horses, right, on where I reside, I have a horse that is a descendant from Sitting Bull's original herd of horses. They're called Lakota horses. They reside up in North Dakota. 2 non-native brothers, 2 non-native individuals. They were brothers. They were Vietnam vets. Pooled their money together because in the early 70s, late 60s, early 70s, the United States government was going to eradicate this herd of horses out of what we now know as the Theodore Roosevelt National Park. But when Sitting Bull went to Standing Rock, to the reservation, any tribal people that went to the reservation, the first thing that they did was confiscated the horses and replaced them with, other animals that couldn't outrun the U.S. cavalrymen's horses. So they took our relatives, ripped that connection, ripped our family, our community apart. That was the first step. And when they ripped them apart, then they thought, well, shoot, man, let's just take these horses clear out into nature, into the wilderness, and let wilderness take care of them. Wipe them out, eradicate them. But again, the horses are the bridge between the physical and spiritual. They have the connection. We've always had horses in this country long before the Spanish ever even brought theirs. So these horses continue because they knew the land. They knew how to move. They knew its laws. They resided within all of it. So they existed this whole time. And so when the United States government decided they were going to remove them out of the Theodore Roosevelt National Park, Frank Kuntz and his brother decided to put their money and all their savings together and save as many of these horses as they could. And, you know, I'm thankful that they did. That is a connection to something very sacred. And I remember the first time that I finally was able to ride that horse, to connect with my brother. I wept, because at that point is when I felt like there was that void that was in my life. That missing link in my life was now gone. And I go out every day and I hug my brother. I said, thank you. Just help me. Help me. One day we're standing there. There's buffalo there. We have buffalo here. And we have that horse here. And my nephew was standing there. And of course, we're standing by a fence. We have a big fence because the buffalo, they're big, you know. And I was standing there. I looked at my nephew. I said, Toshka. I said, look, right here. We weren't practicing social distancing, by the way. But right here was the horse standing there. The Lakota horse, the descendant from Sitting Bull's original herd. And just right on the other side of the fence, could reach out and touch one of our relatives. The buffalo was standing there. And him was standing straight across from me. I said, just take a moment. Just take a moment and look at this. See this. We have a relative right here who's supposed to have been wiped out. We have a relative over here that's supposed to have been wiped out. And here we are. We're supposed to have been wiped out too. All three of us. But here we are in 2020 and we're still here. They gave us a language. They brought 7 sacred rites to the women, 5 to us as men that we get to participate in. My brother right here, his grandparents carried our grandparents. Now we're back together. All of us are back together. I said that to him. One day we had that realization, that confirmation. And so there's many things that I want to share, but there's many things that I'm still learning and trying to understand as well. You know, and that's the reason why I brought buffalo back. I'm not raising them to eat. I don't see them as food. I don't see it. I know that's what they've done for us, but I see them as a source to a part of a cultural identity that was shared with us. You know, our cultural identity was given to us by all these different First Nations people that we now address and call as animals. And some were even given to us by what we call plants now. They're part of the First Nations people, you know, and so I'm reflecting back to those that had shared something with us, that given us something. You know, I remember people telling me stories about the coyote. Not my people, not our people, but other people. Yeah, I learned some Lakota stuff. Oh yeah, what'd you learn? Oh, I learned about the trickster. I said, oh, what's the trickster? They said the coyote. Oh, or the spider. Oh, okay, well, let me tell you about the coyote. The coyote is a reminder. They taught us how to sing songs. They gave us songs. They taught us how to sing songs of gratitude, regardless of our circumstances and situations. Regardless of our struggles, the coyotes teach us to sing our songs of gratitude every morning and every night. And so I really am trying to overcome the pain and misery that has segregated us and separated us as a Lakota people and as family members and families to families. You know, because I know that we can't continue to believe that we can't continue to trick ourselves and believe that we can continue to exist by this separation that we are in right now, in the segregation that we're in. And so, you know, everyone has a role. everyone has good ideas, you know, and sometimes we have bad ideas. But nonetheless, if we continue to share, we're going to be able to weed out the bad ideas and embrace the good ideas, you know, and not everyone's going to come with the perfect idea. But just because someone doesn't come with the perfect idea or a good idea doesn't mean that they're any lesser than. We should continue to say, okay, well, that may not work, but hey, look at this one, and overcome our own ego and say, all right, we need to work together, because the only way the Indian is going to be saved, and who's going to save the Indian, is the Indian. That's the way I see it. Maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. But for me, I feel I'm right.
That's really empowering. I liked what you said earlier about grants aren't the solution to our problems, that we are. There's a lot of lacking of money, and there's a lot of, I guess maybe an assumption on money will change all of our problems, but with the human nature interaction and personal stuff, that's literally on us. And I appreciate that reminder, Moses, I really do. I really liked with Yellowstone and Taylor Sheridan and your whole team, how it impacted the Native American people. And it took our issues and our realities and our struggles to the forefront. What you all did with the Missing Murdered Indigenous Women movement was huge. And I loved watching that. And I love watching as a Native woman, our struggles being shared and being relayed in a way that really impacts us. Like, you know, it was not far from the truth of what, you know, missing murdered Indigenous women are going through. And I really love that, and how our culture is being shared and our realities are being relayed. And even when Rip made Beth the fry bread, I love that. Oh, yes. Yeah. That was awesome. And I just really appreciate what you're all doing. And as a Native American, I mean, we're 2% of the national population. Yeah. And that still freaks me out sometimes, because most of us are trying to empower and better, you know, our local communities. And we're trying to gain more ground. And what Yellowstone did for me was just, it really made me proud of our people. And it really made me get some grounding and some footing. And Scotty Clifford was on the other day, a few weeks ago, and I loved what the message he had to say. He was like, you know, we should support each other and we should encourage each other. And you know, not everybody's a basketball player. Not everybody's, you know, this realm or that realm. You know, we're you know, we have creativity and we have art and we have music, and we should support those avenues. And I love that message. And I don't know, I'm just really proud of what you have done and what you are doing and what you're promoting. Like, I would love to see more Native actors and actresses in these films and roles and stuff like that. And when we first told people that you were coming on, everybody was like, oh my God, you know, that's amazing. And people were freaked out, like, he's a movie star. And I'm like, well, he's also a person. He's one of our relatives, you know, he's from where I'm from. And, you know, and there's this disassociation that people give, like, oh, they're Hollywood, they have nothing to do with us, you know. And I love that you keep yourself so well grounded with that. So I just wanted to thank you for that. And a lot of questions that I'm getting asked are, what's next for you? What do you plan on your
what's next for me? You know, it all depends. I mean, in this industry, I never get super excited or my mind's nothing's set in stone until you're signing a contract. And then, you know, because I just did a couple auditions the other day. I got another one to do this evening that has to be in by tomorrow morning. And so to always memorize lines, I'm always just, you know, working hard at what I can. I mean, you know, there was a gentleman named Gail Edmond. He was a alcohol counselor for some, and for the Native community here in Kansas City. And I got to visiting with him, and I like what he always said. He always said, he'd always tell people, no matter what, every day you're given, do something Indian. Just do one thing, even if it's just one thing, do one thing Indian. And so that's the same concept into this industry. Is like, okay, I got to do something to work towards the art of acting. And so I'm always trying to do something. And so we have auditions. I got auditions to do. There's a project that's going to be coming out, and I'm pretty excited about it because it's a pretty big one, but I really can't say anything about it. But to have a Native in this particular, to have an Indian person in this project, it's amazing. It's going to be really cool. And so at some point, as soon as I get to go ahead to let people know, I'll be sure to let you know. But I'm just excited that there was a Native role in this particular project. I have some right now. For me, it's my goal is, or what I have in store or thoughts is, first of all, I want to go back home. I want to go back home to spend some quality time with my family. That's one of the things that I want to do right now. But with this whole COVID thing going on, it's been, I just get so nervous because I don't want to be that guy. I everywhere I go, I don't ever leave the house. I mean, thank goodness we got a place that I can stay and ride horses, but it's just, I don't go out, do anything, wear a mask if I do go out, and we wear a mask all the time. And it's not to make a political statement, simply just to, try to protect myself the best that I can. Even before I get back in the truck or the vehicle, Sarah Ann always hands me kind of Lysol spray. So I spray the bottom of my shoes before I set foot back in the vehicle, especially if I'm pumping gas, because, this virus is invisible and it's deadly. And some people it's not deadly, but to our elders it is, to our old people, our parents it is, to even the young people with health issues. So I've taken this virus very seriously. Again, I'm not a Democrat or Republican. I just like to vote for whoever I believe is going to be good for and may give us a chance as Indian people, and to be willing to listen to us. And so I really take this virus to heart. So I want to go back home at some point and spend some time with family. That's my next step. That's my next endeavor. And just, go pray with my brothers, and my family. And so that's I'm longing for that. I can't wait for that. And maybe go walk where I used to run as a kid. I definitely want to do that. That's always good medicine for me. So there's a lot of things. There's other projects there's irons in the fire, but nothing, like I said, nothing set in stone until I'm signing a contract and I know we're going for sure. And so it's
Moses,
one of those things.
I know that you have already 500 irons in the fire, and you're so extremely overbooked and everything. But we have a listening audience, several of them that now think you need to write a book.
Oh my gosh.
You better get on that.
There's a lot of things. I mean, I'm always going to be an activist at heart, because when I think about us, I mean, you look at it. I was telling Sister Julie this the other day. I was like, man, here's the crazy thing about, we still don't even have human rights as Indian people. We still are not declared human beings within our own homelands, but yet for some crazy reason, we still have to pay taxes, so on and so forth. It's like, why are we even doing that? We should all be, if we're tribally enrolled, then we should be tax exempt, period, regardless of where we're at within our own homeland. And so I'm always still trying to get that recognized with all the different people that I meet, not to try to start controversy, but just to educate and share with people. Hey, did you know that we're still not declared human beings? They're like, what? Yeah, that's the truth. We're still not declared human beings. And so I remember my brother Joe shared with me about the welfare program and who populates that program the most, which race does, and I find out it's a Lakota people. So I'm like, man. And so to bring recognition to all of that and the things that are occurring to all these different individuals throughout wherever I go is so important. So it's always about educating. And the reason why I've been asked to write a book before, but the reason why I can't write a book is because I always had this one thing that haunts my mind is when my grandfathers told me, they said, if a word is written, then it is no longer lived. So continue to live, and show the others how to live. Then the word shall always be alive. And so I try to think about, what all of that. And again, I have my own struggles. Like I said, I have my own struggles, and I'm proud of all of us as Indian people. I don't care which reservation we're from. I'm proud of all of us because I look at the spiritual concept and I try to see through spiritual eyes and look upon all human beings. I've seen eagles and crows all sitting in the same tree on the same branch. I have there's an oak tree in the backyard, and I see blue jays, all these different birds sitting in this tree, and they're not beating each other up. They're not trying to chase each other off. They're all just sitting and sharing the same tree. And I'm like, man, we need to get back. We need to stop being so civilized and start being human beings again. And that way humanity can live. And we're all we all share the same atmosphere, and we have to end race wars. And the biggest race war we have to end for us as Lakota people is the shame that we've been taught about who we are. And so that's just, there's so much I want to talk about. I was telling Julie the other day, I was like, man, we might need more than just an hour, but it's just, we got a lot of good people. There's still a lot of good people. There's there's the Mothers Against Meth, there's people there. There's Sam Highcrane on the Rosebud Reservation trying to bring back the horse culture. There's that group. There's my brother Joe up on the Cheyenne River Reservation trying to do something there. Everyone's trying to do something. So there's people that are putting forth the effort, and even if it's just to go there and pray with them, you're still supporting. Mm-hmm. You don't have to give financially always. Don't think that's. I'm talking about us as Indian people. Is that, man? Even just to go there and pray, to share a story and a positive story that is going to affect that child, because what the story shared with us when we were children has affected my life, not immediately but later, and still affecting my life today. The stories that were shared with us, I remember Sister Julie was she told me, reminded me when my aunt and them invited him out for supper. Julie, I'm gonna share this story, okay? Is she there? Okay, so when we were kids, they were coming over and we saw them pulling in. So we were playing by the gate. We ran over to the gate to open it up, and go ahead, Julie, you tell it.
We were playing outside and we were running to the road, and a couple of people had bikes, and we scared each other or something, and we all go running back. Anyway, I fell and I skinned up my knees. My face hit the dirt. I looked up and everybody's running away, and Moses stopped and looked back. So he came back, helped me get up and dusted me off, and we're walking. And I was so mad at my sisters and everybody else because nobody even cared what happened to me. Anyway, we were laughing about that. When I told Moses, I said, I love that you looked back and you remembered me and you came back to help me. You could have sat and pointed at me and laughed, and I think we laughed about it later. Thank you for helping me out.
We laughed. Well, I laughed not at the fact that you fell. I laughed at the fact of how you was crying after you fell. But it was all good. I mean, a lot of those memories, a lot of those things, that that we've experienced, and all those stories that still affect us today. I mean, I had a good deep laugh when she reminded me of that story, and I needed that, because it's that laughter that has seen our people through so much. And I look at what, like, Walt Pruitt, a lot of respect and love for what he's doing and what he's accomplished, you know, put a skate park in, and he's always advocating for our people. And man, I have a lot of respect for him. But he shared with me one time, he said, they always said, that what is moving should be sacred. Our movement should be sacred. And I think about that. I think about what he shared with me, and we shared things with each other, and helping and encouraging. That's what it was. It wasn't to say, hey, I shared that with you, so give me credit for that. No, they shared something with me, but I'm gonna give credit where credit is due, because I want people to acknowledge there are good teachers out there. There are others that are still doing a lot of good stuff and working hard and fighting, because we have a lot of strong Indian people, and I'm proud of everyone that I get to meet that is advocating for us, in many ways, and in their own way, whether it's through skate parks or boxing or horses. Each of these individuals are still incorporating tradition, culture. They're still incorporating culture, and that's one thing that I still stand true to when it comes to what my father said. My father, Enoch, always told me, he said, son, you could do anything and you can do anything in the world. Just keep Wakantika first. Don't ever forget Wakantika or God, and so I always try to keep that at the forefront of my mind, and now, along with that, I incorporate the ancestors. They're there with, man, how are they going to see this? Again, we've been told to be ashamed for so long of our culture and stuff like that. Oh, you can't see this, you can't see that, you can't do this, you can't do that. But if you look at the laws of nature, again, to be recognized by the First Nations people that we call plants and animals, if we can't be recognized by them, then we can't be recognized by our ancestors. If we're not recognized by our ancestors, then we're not going to be recognized by the one who dreamt us all. As a kid, they used to tell me to be afraid of the darkness. And they used to say, oh, evil dwells in the darkness, evil. And I did become afraid of the darkness eventually. But it wasn't because of evil spirits. It was because of the evil physicalness that dwelled. My dad told me, he said, a spirit can't hurt you, but a human can. And so I began to, as I began to mature and grow up, I look back at what is darkness. And people that came here told us about the evil that dwells in darkness. And I kept praying and kept searching and kept asking the first people, the First Nations, and finally I come to the understanding, to the teachings, to the sharing, that darkness is the oldest mother of them all. She is the most sacred. She is the most holiest. Why? Because she has given life to all. She's the greatest life giver. She gave life to the Stone Nation. She gave life to the water. She gave birth to light. She gave birth to, when we were born, we first resided in darkness. So we were drawn from the darkness, not because the darkness was a bad thing, but because darkness was a place to go back to. So we could reconnect with ourselves in the most sacred and understand that. And so I overcame the darkness, the fear of darkness. Now I go back to the darkness to learn more from the greatest teacher. But man, I don't want to put anyone to sleep. So I don't know if there's any other questions that I could answer or what, but
So there's a couple things, Moses. You're talking about the written word. They created a thing now called audiobooks. So you could
oh
create an audiobook without having to put anything in writing. So there's one way to
oh
fix
oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. Oh, Sister Maggie, you're killing me.
Yeah, I was gonna really tease you, but I'm trying not to do that. So audiobooks is my best way to try to make you laugh. But Moses, we've got quite a few people that have asked for a part two for you to come back and visit some more with us about these things, and we want to give you that invitation. We're really appreciative. I really enjoyed listening to you, and um, one of the things as a teacher that I've always thought about is, like, who paves the way for our children? We do. That's the answer, is we do. And so we have to be the ones to do it. We can't ask anybody else to come and pave that path if we want our children to be Lakota. And so we have to be the ones that do that. And so I also wanted to tell you that this is one of your nephews. So he was, when I first went to Cheyenne Eagle Butte to teach, he was in my class, and he is sitting there, and I won't say his name either. I think he's watching. He's probably saying "ease," but he was sitting there, and I introduced myself, and I told him where I told my whole class where I was from, and how I come to be there to teach. And he stayed after class, and he wanted to visit with me. He told me he's from Porcupine too, or family from Porcupine and all of that. And so he told me who he was, and I'm like, hey, I grew up with your Uncle Moses. And he just really got all excited about that. And so to this day, like, I'm really excited to see him. He's into film too, like he does documentaries and things like that. And so I always really get excited. And I go up, when they were graduating, I went up for all of their graduation dinners and stuff to kind of celebrate with them and give them a hard time. I have stories for all of them, and working with Joel. And
yeah.
I still do that. And I was going to invite him to come on to Toksa Hour too, to come talk about the Wolf's Den and all of that hard work that he does up there too, in their movement in
Oh, that'd
Cheyenne
be
Eagle
good.
Butte. So there's
That'd be good.
and then just to say too that Toksa Hour was started for this purpose, is that we wanted to be able not only to talk about things going on in our community, but the leaders that we have within our own people. Oftentimes we never do that. We're so eager to give our give it to somebody else. Let somebody else come in and solve our own problems. And so this is a way that we hope to try to show those that watch and children, that there is a better way, and we are our own. We're the answer to our problems, and so we have to be the ones to do it. And so we want to thank you. I'm just so I'm just I'm just so very proud of you and all of your accomplishments. And I just think back, like, people don't know our story until we tell them, and sometimes we don't even tell them the whole story. There's things that just we know. And so I just wanted to tell you that, and to anybody that is watching, that Moses has a really spectacular story, and he has overcome, and I am very proud of him, and I'm a witness. I'm a witness to his life. So I just wanted to share that with you, and again invite you, Moses, to come back and visit with us, um, and bring more. Maybe you can maybe we could really get into some Yellowstone. Really talk
Right.
about all kinds of stuff about Yellowstone, about the
I
characters and
definitely can do that, except for I just can't talk about season 4. Because I
like,
think
maybe you could tell us the behind the scenes of characters. Like, is it hard to transform yourselves into those?
Oh my gosh, that's funny. You know, it's crazy because every once in a while, I don't get starstruck. But once in a blue moon, I have to pinch myself and be like, man, am I really here? I mean, you know, I did a show with Ethan Hawke, and I remember how a lot of girls, man, were all in love with Ethan back in the day, and still today probably. Um, but I was like, holy cow, here I am sitting here with Ethan Hawke, and we're just joking and, you know, pushing each other around, and I'm like, man, I was just this little reservation kid, no running water and electricity. I still reflect on that, not in a negative way, but just to know that, you know, here's what helped me in life was that I truly began to understand that if the whole world, every human being of every race, every way of prayer believed in me, and they told me they believed in me, but if I didn't believe in myself, I would go nowhere. But and the opposite of that, the whole world could be against me and not have no belief in me at all. But if I believe in myself, I'm gonna go a long ways. And that's what it came down to was just believing in myself. I mean, you know, I'm still learning and trying to embrace that belief. I mean, I remember going to basketball games and watching Maggie. Oh my gosh, super athlete, fast runner, heck of a baller. I mean, you know, all those, I remember all that as his childhood. But what I'm getting at again is self-belief. If I had that self-belief even as a younger individual, maybe I would have got it really figured out and truly make a difference in a lot of lives, you know, instead of the route that I ended up going. But without going the route that I did, I wouldn't be able to help others but won't be able to help others out before they go down that path, you know. So we're trying to make a clear path, a different path that's much easier for our people the best that we can. And so again, I'm really proud of both of you, sisters, Julie, Maggie, for what you're doing, and continue the amazing work. And like I said, I'll help out in any way that I possibly can, you know, because I know that we're facing a lot, but we are strong enough. We are definitely strong enough, you know. And I always try to conduct my life in the manner that I'm not out to make history. I'm not out to make history at all. I simply want to be a part of a history of our ancestors. I want to blend into that, you know. And so I'm not out to make history. I just want to be a part of that amazing history that once was. And I'm getting the courage. And I'm building my strength, because I know it's going to take a lot of courage and strength to be able to do that. And so I'm getting there. It's a slow process, you know. I'm like an oak tree. I grow real slow. You know, I'm not like some type of buckbrush, or even a choke cherry tree grows real slow. And so it's because they're slow growth that they're stronger. And so some of us grow fast, doesn't make us any lesser than, and some of us grow slower. And so, but we still have to be there. We all have to be there for one another. And so it's just, I believe in what Scotty Clifford said, you know, and I agree with him. We got to start looking out for one another, loving one another. Simple as that. Just simply love one another and stop speaking illy of each other. And we're going to see a change in our communities, and we're going to begin to see spiritual poverty. We're going to begin to see mental poverty, you know, physical or emotional poverty begin to disappear. And in that disappearance, substance abuse, alcohol abuse, suicides, all those things will begin to go away. And like I said, I have dreams, I have plans, I have ideas of how to make us Lakota people self-efficient. And maybe one day, if that day ever comes, I run for a political position, that I can begin to truly implement those ideas, you know. But until then, I'm always gonna love our Lakota, our great Lakota nation. I have a lot of love for our Lakota people, all Indian people of all other tribes, you know. Again, I believe in spirituality. I don't believe we were the bloodthirsty, warned heathens that they made us out to, because I see what spirituality is about. It's about love and compassion. So thank you guys for everything. And yeah, I'll be back on. I'll have to figure out, well, I have other people. I'll have my people. I just kidding. I'll have my people contact me so that I can contact you. You know, and again, kudos to my manager, Michelle Shining Out. You know, she's from the Colville tribe up there in the Washington State area, and I would, like I said, I want to see more of our Indian people get involved in all aspects. And so I have a lot of love for her. She's literally like a sister to me. She's been in my corner for a long time and very knowledgeable. And so we talked the other day. We talked about how could we get our people involved. And it's like, man, okay, we got to start encouraging our young people to study drama, not do drama on social media, but study drama in school, so you can learn how to step away from the dramatic stuff and still have laughter and joy. But, you know, take drama, do some acting, do singing, do whatever gets you in front of the public, and don't be afraid, because I know it takes a lot of courage to be able to get in front of people and speak and do things. I still get nervous today, but you can overcome it and do it. And once we start getting more and more of our young people, man, they're always looking for Indian riders, for Indian guys, Indian people who could ride. I always keep telling them, man, our Indian women were the forefront of everything. You know, I'm trying to change the mindset of that industry, that it's the male is the dominant and the strength. You know, I always tell them the women are the strength, the women are the power, and so on and so forth. Man, there was no Sitting Bull without the women that walked with them. So on, there was no Crazy Horse without the women that walked with them, so on and so forth. You know, it's so to go back and to our true matriarchal setting and understanding of that. So I'm trying to get the Indian women even recognized, not just, I mean, what Taylor did in that season, referencing and bringing acknowledgement to the, you know, missing Indigenous women, you know, that you know, that was what he did. I didn't have no idea. And I said, I share in it and I support that, because I have relatives that are missing also. And so we even have to look at our missing men. There are Indigenous missing men. You know, there are Indian men that had lost their lives, that are still unsolved. There's many things that are still out there that we as a community of people, we need to also really, there's people opening the door for us. So we have to be able to walk through that, and that door is going to fit all of us together. We all have to walk through it, not just one of us or two of us, but all of us. And so I can't emphasize that enough. It's going to take all of us. Our spiritual leaders need to come back together. They need to start praying against jealousy. We need all of us. Every sundancer needs to pray against jealousy. Every individual that goes to an Nichaka need to pray against jealousy. We all need to make that stand, and that's how we begin to heal. We have a much faster healing process, and like I said, I'm getting there myself, and I'm working hard at it. So thank you guys. I'm sorry, I can go on and on. Someone put a quarter.
Sometimes I think that's a trait of Porcupine District, but being from here, but like, we got the gift.
Right, that's right. That's truly right. And so, you know,
Well,
we
you get your people in touch with our people. Hey, our people is just
yeah.
me and Julie.
Yeah, that's me. That's me. I wouldn't do that to you guys. That's why I said I'll have my people get a hold of me, so that way I could let you know what's going on. I don't. There are a lot of times I have to ask Michelle, you know, and then Michelle. If Michelle doesn't know, then Sarah Ann will know, or someone else will know what's going on. So I need all these different people to know what's going on, but with the whole pandemic thing, it's really, I just been trying to work more at my art and trying to take advantage of the auditions that have come my way and try to really figure out how to do them in a good way. And so it's been taking a lot of time on the art, working towards the art of this industry and riding horses. riding horses. Do a lot of that.
Well, it has been good. I enjoyed it. And yeah, let us know when you can. We'll schedule you.
I definitely will. Thank you all so very much for your time, and man, much love and respect for the great Lakota Nation and all Indian people. I wouldn't be who I am without you. Yeah. Doksha ke.
Toksa.
Doksha.